Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be building the bt01 chassis from Tamiya, Porsche 911 Carrera RSR 2.8. This is a two-wheel drive high-performance racing car. The cool thing about the Tamiya Carrera bt01 chassis is that you can have two different wheel-based configurations, and you also get a choice of three different mounting positions for the motor. So what I thought I'd do, I've laid all the kit out. So we've got all the parts there. I've laid all the parts trees out, A through to T, makes it a lot easier to build. And then we've also got the manual, and then you get two other manuals that come with this kit so that you can build it with whichever motor configuration you want. I'll be going for the rear motor mount because that's what Porsches have the engine in the back, so that's what we'll be doing with that. And also, I've just had my new Tamiya screwdriver set arrive. I've been buying Tamiya tools now for quite a while, and I find they're pretty, well, they are really good high quality tools. So, right, have a little look at all the parts. Right, let's crack on. Right, I've got the manual open, page 1. Then we've got the stages 1, 2 and 3, 4, 5 and 6 on these next two pages. I like to lay my parts out like I did in the previous 956 build video. Cut everything's 1 to 1, can't possibly go wrong. I've laid out all the tree parts off the plastic trees. Good idea to get yourself a set of side cutters because they cut the plastic parts off without leaving any sharp edges, and it looks a lot cleaner when the model's finished. So I'll put these bits together and then we can see what it looks like through each stage. I'll do a page by page guide through. I'll get that built and then see what she looks like. Right, we've got the motor now put into the gearbox. A little note, that drive coupler needs to be fully seated onto the shaft to make sure there's absolutely no play in the spur gear, because what happens is, which is the same as the new mini chassis, the MB01, I built it, didn't seat that cut properly, went for the first run and that pin come flying out, and that was a nuisance. But I've got the motor mounted, spur gears completely flush with the side of the pinion, and there shouldn't be any movement in that whatsoever. So what I did, I basically put on the side of the bench on the drive cup, and then with my screwdriver give it a couple of bangs on the top to completely seat that, because that is very, very tight in there. And then there's a grip ring that goes on that stops the pin that holds the drive cup from coming out. So I'll put the next stage together, put the motor into the chassis, and then we'll have a little look what that looks like. Here we have the motor in the chassis now, and a sponge block on the back to stop the battery from rubbing when the battery's put into the model. I've also noticed after building the M01 chassis, this is very, very similar in its construction. I'm assuming it's a follow-on from all the other M chassis that they made. I think they got to number 8 on the M08 chassis run. I'll put the rest of the plastic parts onto the chassis, and then I'll just give you a little tutorial on how to put the differential together to make sure that runs lovely and smooth. Right, here we have the chassis built up. Got the sides on, rear plate to hold the battery inside. And now I'll put the diff together. Quite straightforward to do the Tamiya diffs. You can shim these diffs out as well. Just make sure you use plenty of the supplied grease that Tamiya gives you. And if you want to change how the way the diff behaves, i.e. looser or tighter, you can buy aftermarket grease to put in these differentials to stiffen them up, or a lighter weight to loosen them. You put your little gears on the thing, poke them in. I always like to add a bit more grease on the top. And you add your top gear, make sure that seats in properly. And then you have the spur gear that pops on the top, and little tabs correspond to the hole in the back plate part of the diff. Then you get tiny little screws, 4 of those. And what I like to do is nip them up to start with. I try not to over tighten one too much, because you can pull everything out of sync. Another good thing for when you're using these tiny little screws, magnetic screwdriver. These are so tiny. Nip them. And go from one side to the other. Don't need to be wound up too tight. All you'll do is strip the screw out. Simple case of popping bearings on. I was going to get some ball races, but to be quite honest, I'm not going to run this buggy that much, so didn't really see the need. Right, I'll build up the gearbox, and then we'll have a look what it all looks like. Here we have the rear gearbox constructed now. Got 2 press rings holding the gearbox together. Put loads of grease in there. Lovely and smooth. Same again with that end cup. There's a pin in there. You really need to seat that well to stop the pin from falling out. But overall, that's really smooth, and there's no shims in that at all. Maybe over time you might have to shim it if you run the buggy a lot, the car a lot. But apart from that, super smooth. So I'll sort all the wishbones out now on sections 12, and then we'll put them on, and I'll show you what it all looks like. Right, here we have front wishbones put together. That's how it's pretty cool. They've actually got droop screws on these, so you can do the screw up, lift the suspension, undo the screw, lower the suspension. I think that's a pretty cool feature on the front of these little buggies, considering it's not a really high-end buggy. As before, differential and spur gear all done. Right, we'll turn over on the next page now, page 8. I'll lay the parts out, and we'll put a bit more together. Right, now we're going to put the rear spur gear in the buggy. Quite weird, this one. Apart from the MBO one, which it's a very strange construction. You actually stick everything up in the back of the buggy, and then you have a plate on the back to hold it all in. Never seen that on a Tamiya buggy before. So gearbox is in. You get a little joiner to go in the middle to couple the two together, so the motor can drive the rear wheels. I'll put all the other wishbones on, and then I'll show what it all looks like. Here we have all the rear wishbones put on now. Everything's nice and loose. A little bit of slop in them. I suppose if you really wanted to, you could shim them up, but I'm not too bothered about that. As long as there's no binding and everything's just drops under its own weight. The suspension will work a lot better, no binding. I do like the idea of these droop screws though, so you can adjust all the suspension. I think that's pretty cool. So I'll put the rear knuckles together and the rear drive cups. We'll put the drive shafts in, which have O-rings, I suppose, to give them, so when the suspension compresses, it's got a little bit of give on the dog bones, on the drive shafts. And then we'll have a look what it looks like. Right, put the rear wishbones all together with the drive shafts now. Also got the little drive shafts, little dog bones inside there. Everything's running really nice and smooth. Pretty straightforward putting that together. It's also got the mount for the rear bumper. Got the next pieces out for the next stage, which is to make the chassis the correct length, because this chassis can be built in 2 different lengths, short and long wheelbase. So I'll put all that together and then we'll have a look what it looks like. Right, here we have the back section of the car built now. Same again, everything drops under its own weight. Got your droop screws in, and I've also noticed the front gearbox is exactly the same as the back, so I'm assuming you can run front and rear wheel drive very easily by just taking out 1 or 2 screws, which is quite a clever idea from Tamiya. I think it's all done on that part. So I'll join the chassis now, the 2 parts of the chassis together, and I'll show you what it's going to look like. Right, now we've got both pieces of the chassis put together in a short wheelbase for the Porsche body. Exceptionally strong chassis. I've also put the steering knuckles on there. Everything's moving nicely, nice and smooth. So the next step, put the shock absorbers on and the polyurethane front bumper, and then I'll show you what it's going to look like. Right, here we have the car. Front polyurethane bumper on, front springs and shocks on, just a basic friction shock, nice and smooth. Same with the rear, nice and smooth. I don't think it would have cost much, maybe another £5–10 to put oil shocks in there, just to make it handle a little bit nicer. And what is quite interesting with these buggies, because you can run front and rear motors at the moment, I've got steering on the front and I've got steering on the back until these get locked into place. But it doesn't take much, maybe 10 screws to convert this to a front wheel drive car. So you've got 2 cars in one. If you wanted to, you know, maybe have a mini chassis and make it more authentic so that it's driving its front wheels like it should do. Or rear wheel drive for the Porsche body, which is like a Porsche's rear wheel drive. I'll get the braces to put on and the body mounts, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Right, just put all the electronics in. We've got the servo, speed control. I'm just waiting for a receiver to come. That sits on the top there. Cable tied everything in. Where the switch is supposed to go, it can't, because the switch isn't the right design for that particular, the way the holes are drilled in the chassis. So I'll stick all the braces on now, and the wheels, and show what it looks like. Right, put the wheels on, which look pretty awesome. The old Fuchs replica alloys. All the rear supporting arms are in. These are fully adjustable, so you can adjust toe in and toe out. Got the front the same. All the steering is in and put on properly. You get a different selection of bars in this kit depending on where you've mounted the motor. This is as far back as it would go, so I've got the longest rod on there. And also I found in this kit they give you one of these little things for putting on the end of the rods and being able to do them up a lot easier than twisting all your fingers up. Overall, nice and smooth. Everything's a bit wiggly though. don't know why everything's so wiggly. Not particularly, I'm not quite sure how that's going to hold any of the settings you put into it if you want tow in or tow out, because basically it tows in and tows out on its own. Not the bestest fitting part. Everything's a bit wiggly, but I'll prepare the body, get the window masks on, paint the body, and then I'll show you what it's all going to look like. Right, I thought I'd stick the chassis on the turntable, just give it a couple of spins round so you can see what it looks like. Quite a competitive chassis if you spend a few hours shimming everything out and putting some decent shocks on. And these gearboxes are quite capable of taking brushless motors, so you could make this quite a fast little car. Very similar to the bt01 chassis, the new mini chassis that Tamiya have brought out. Overall, pretty cool. I'll paint the body up, which is quite an easy job because it's only one colour. And then I'll show you what it's all going to look like. Right, I've got the body washed, soapy water and all clean and dry. I've put the window masks on. And I like to put my paint into a bowl of warm water for about 5-10 minutes just to thin the paint up. It comes out the tin a lot easier. So I'll get the first 2 or 3 coats on and then show you what it's going to look like. First 2 coats of white. Probably going to need another couple of coats, so I'll pop them on, show you what it's like. Here we have the body shell fully sprayed and cut out now and put onto the chassis. I've left the window masks on to stop greasy fingerprints from getting inside when I'm putting the decals on. So I'll stick all the decals on now and show you what it's going to look like fully finished. And there we are, the Tamiya bt01 chassis with the Porsche 911 Carrera RSR 2.8 body. I think it looks absolutely awesome. Especially the wheels, those replica Fouche wheels really make the model stand out. I've also added some fine line tape to pick the bonnet out there, as you can see, and the doors. Really good fun build. I hope you enjoyed the build video. The next build video I'll be doing is the Tamiya Super Astute. Just waiting for it to come into the model shop. If you could give Marky by RC a like and a subscribe, it'd be much appreciated for a new channel. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.